Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is lesson number 11 of Beginner's Java. Today we're going to be going over how to make a simple guessing game. And so I'm going to sort of diagram out the functionality of the game before we begin here, and it's going to go something like this. Alright, so the computer is going to choose a number between 1 and 1,000. The computer is going to allow the player to try and guess the number 15 times. I guess we'll start there and see if it's too easy, too hard. When the player gets the number right, the game exits and congratulates the player, or not exits, but offers to let the player play again, and congratulates the player if the player didn't guess it. The computer encourages the player to try again, and yeah, play again. Great. So the first thing that we need to do for this, and perhaps the most important thing that we need to do for this, is to generate a random number, right? Because if we know the number, the game isn't really all that fun. So let's take an integer, and we're going to call it secret, and we'll set it as blank for now. So we know that we need to create a random number. And the way to do that is to say rand equals new random. And so you'll notice that when I don't actually select random from that drop-down list, this gets really angry and it says, hey, we can't figure out what random is. But then if I just hit Alt-Enter, it will actually include random for me. It's one of the better features of IntelliJ. It's figuring out what the hell you mean when you say it. So the way for us to set secret equal to a number that we don't know what it is to say rand.nextInt. And so now I'm just going to have a little bit of fun here and show you guys the kind of numbers that take place if we are to just do a random, you know, let's pick a number. So we'll say int counter equals 100, and we'll say while counter is greater than 0, system.out.println secret. And so what we'll do here is secret equals rand.nextInt. Okay, so and then we have to do counter minus, just like that. And so when we run this, we'll notice that the stuff that is in there is just atrocious, right? Negative, I don't know what that is, 1,286,000,000, blah, you know, like, and it's negative numbers, it's positive numbers, it's all over the place. So, okay, I think we can agree that that is not between 1 and 1,000. So, in an earlier video, I showed you guys how we're going to use the modulo operator. And the way that we do that here is we can say modulo 1,000. And this will get us a little bit closer to what we want, right? So when we run this, we now see that we get a bunch of numbers between negative, or well, between 0 and between 1,000. So we're off to a pretty good start. But we still don't want negative numbers. That doesn't really feel fair to the player. So we're going to use a math command, so math.abs, and we're going to wrap this whole thing in that, right? So as you can see, we did that. Now, getting rid of this counter variable for a minute because we don't really need it, and we'll just set this to while true for a second. We will do if secret equals 0, break. So the reason I set this up is to show you guys that when doing things this way, secret will eventually equal 0, and 0 is outside of the 1 to 1,000 that we want. Now, in this case, it did take a number of tries to get us there, right? So we can actually do this the other way around and count how many times it takes. In theory, it should be 1 out of 1,000, but you know, let's count and see how many it takes. So we'll run this, and oh yeah, it helps if we output counter. Counter tries to find the number 0. Right? So we give this a run, and great. So it took us 761 tries to find it that time. It took us 746 that time. Whatever. You know, it's quick, but it's still pretty inefficient. And the goal here is to not have that number. And so the answer is to simply add the number 1. And so once we do that, we'll just get an endless loop because it can no longer equal 0 because it was outputting 0 to 999. And this is an important lesson for a lot of what goes on in Java. Almost everything is 0 indexed. That means if you say 10, it means the numbers 0 through 9. So just keep that in mind. That'll come in handy pretty soon. I also want to call out that when we have a loop like this, something that's always going to execute until we have a condition that becomes true, this is actually called a sentinel loop. You might hear it called that some places. So this is not at all what we're doing here, but I did want to show you guys that, you know, that sort of a methodology for how we're choosing our number, and just get a little bit more into the theory behind loops, I guess. So we'll comment all that stuff out. And I guess we don't really need counter, so I'll plop it in this blob of stuff we don't need. So that does seem like a really long tangent, but I feel like it's pretty valuable to everyone. That second one doesn't need to be there. So we've now picked a number between 1 and 1,000, and that feels like the majority of the lesson, and it kind of is. So we're going to need 2 loops here, right? We're going to need a loop that is while true. Or do we want to make a variable? Let's make it a Boolean. And we'll call it continue equals true, right? Oh, sorry, I can't use the word continue. Player, let's just call it choice. I don't know. Sure, let's do that. So we'll start by saying well choice. So again, this is while true. This is going to run until we tell it to stop. So the first thing that we want to do is begin by saying, let's create the player guess. And we'll say that starts as -1. So we're going to create a scanner object because we need one. Scan equals new scanner system.in. So as you see when I'm typing, it keeps coming up with this suggestion bubble right here saying, hey, is this the library you were looking for, this java.util.scanner? Because I don't know what you're talking about when you say scanner. And so you'll occasionally see this when you're coding, and it will offer to import it for you by hitting Alt-Enter. And so that's what I just did up here, is imported the scanner library. And so we'll begin by saying system.out.println, please guess a number between 1 and 1,000, right? So what we want to do here is a few things, right? First, we want to take a number from the player. And let's assume that our player is a jerk, right? So the first thing that we want to do is, and let's say that the player is going to try to enter characters, or let's say letters, symbols, and numbers. Because the player is a jerk. So we need to make sure that they don't do that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to place this inside of a do-while loop, right? Because remember we said do-while always gets executed once, right? And let's set up a counter here. Int counter equals 0. And so we'll do just like this, and we'll throw this in an if statement. If counter equals 0, please enter a number between 0 and 1,000. So we'll say scan, or what is it, player guess. We'll say dot. Actually, player guess is an int. We're going to have to bring this in as a string if we actually want to check it. Actually, maybe not. Let's see how this goes. There's little things that shouldn't work in Java, but we'll check. And so this is going to be while player guess is less than 0. Or less than 1, or player guess is greater than 1,000. Okay, so let's try this, and I actually don't know what's going to happen if they enter in characters here, and it should actually crash our program, but I mean that was when I learned, which was a number of years ago, and in general, you don't give your users this kind of autonomy to break your stuff. Player guess equals scan.next int. Alright, cool. And so when we run this, we should throw in some characters here, and yeah, okay. So we get an input mismatch exception, which you know, that doesn't feel good. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to take this in as a string. The reason we're taking it in as a string is because we can then determine whether or not it will go into our guess without breaking it. So we can say Let's say int, string player guess temp. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, actually, let's put this on the outside. It makes a lot more sense, right? No. Okay. We'll have to make a little bit of extra code, but that's fine. Because I want to say if counter is greater than 0, or hell, we can just do else, because our counter is never going negative. System.out.println invalid guess. Player guess temp plus please guess a value between 1 and 1,000. So that's going to force our player to do what we want. So we're going to say player guess temp equals scanner dot scan dot next line. Okay, and we'll change this to next line as well. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. It needs to be temp. Alright, so when we do this, what we're going to try to do is say integer dot, or no, is it string dot is? Well, this is a great time for us to refer to the Java docs. I'm searching for the isDigit function, and that might be only used for character. IsDigit Java, and that's fine if we can just make sure that everything is a digit. Yeah, okay. So isDigit only applies to single characters, which is fine. So we'll do this. We'll say for int I equals 0. So this is just checking to make sure every single character is a digit, right? So we'll say boolean all digits equals false. And so here we go. We're going to say that I is less than player guess temp dot length I plus plus. And so what this loop means is that we're looking at every single letter of player guess temp. Or well, this number will be. And so we're going to take that and we're going to do this. We're going to say if player guess temp dot char at I dot, we can do it like this. So we can do character dot is digit player guess temp, oops, lowercase p. Okay, so we'll do this. Let's talk through what this means. This means that if the string here is all digits, we're going to say, okay, cool. But what might be easier is to say, if it's not, and let's start this with true, because then we're going to have to flip it back to being true as well. So, alright, if this is false, so that way, if it's false, we don't keep going and keep checking letters. We're going to say player, or I'm sorry, what did I name that value? All digits equals false. Okay, and we're going to break. And this is going to get changed to and all digits. So, actually, I don't think we need to check that. So let's say when we break here, we can then just come down here and we can say if all digits, then all we do is we try to pull the number out, right? Integer dot parseInt player guess temp, and we'll save that to our player guess variable. And I know you guys are probably like, oh my god, this video is 30 minutes long and we're just doing guesses right now. And it's like, yeah, I know, but I did decide to make the player kind of a jerk here. So, so now we need to set this. Actually, we don't need to set it because it's already set to true. And then all we've got to do is copy the same logic for the other eventuality here. So we just grab this and let's give this a run. And let's see if this works. So if I try to run this and I try to give us a bad number. So, okay, it looks like I did make some kind of an error here. When I do finally put in a reasonable guess, it's not working out. And so, the good news is I did make it so that bad guesses are not getting through. Now I just need to figure out why good guesses aren't getting through. So when all digits equals false, yeah, so that's the catch. I never set it back to being true when it becomes false. Equals true. So just like that, we'll give this one more run, stop that version from running. So I'll add some comments in here before we move on. So we're going to say that our number is 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's an invalid guess. Why is it an invalid guess? It's greater than 1,000. And so now we'll try to enter in something clearly invalid. That's invalid. But now I enter something. Well, only thing we can do here is let's try to step through it. Alright, so this means that this logic is not correct. So once all digits becomes false, we break out of our loop. Which should bring us down here. Okay, I mean let's give it a shot and let's see what happens when we step through this. So like anything, there's a lot of assumptions that we have about how this is going to work. So we enter in 12. Oh, sorry, it seems like I ran it rather than debugged it. Okay, so... Oh, what the... Sorry. Chose the wrong line. Alright, so let's do this. Debug Lesson 11. Okay, so we have a lot of stuff going on here. Great, great, great. Ask us to enter a number between 1 and 1,000. Cool. And so I don't know if we can enter. So we're going to enter like 12 there. Okay, so player guess is equal to 12, which is what we want. Or player guess temp is equal to 12, which is what we want. So if the character is not a digit. So right now, I is equal to 0. We ran that. It's a digit, so I is equal to 1. So when it's 0, it looked at the 1. When it's 1, it looked at the. It's looking at the 2. So we say yeah. Now we jump to here. All digits is true, which means that that worked. So we come into player guess. We have set it to 12. I'm a little... So at this point, in my mind, this should be getting out of there, right? So we say, yeah. Ah, right. But wait. So once we do this, this is actually, what the, wait, what? Okay, right, so that's why we're getting it, because we set a variable called choice equal to true, and we declared counter outside of this loop. So it's obviously going to come back through. And so now counter equals 1, it's going to tell us that we made an invalid guess. But that's actually not true. So when we get out of here, we should say, we should continue the rest of the game. So when we continue the rest of this game, this choice variable will eventually be set, right? So for now, let's just set it equal to false, right? So when we get out of this loop, just to check that everything's working the way we expect it to, so choice equals false. So we run this, and we're going to get like 12, and then the program should exit, which is exactly what we'd expect. So again, if your player is a jerk, it actually takes a lot to correct for that. Now, getting rid of this choice equals false. So yeah, I get that that was a lot of stuff for you. And so just to add those comments I promised, you guys know what all that is. For each letter in the string player guess temp, check to see if the current letter char at I is not a digit. And if so, we set all digits to false and exit our for loop. So what break means is break out of the loop that you are currently in. So this break is affecting this for loop. So yeah, great. So moving on, we've now got the guess part of things correct. Yay! and it only took 40 lines of code. So now we're going to so believe it or not, this needs to go in yet another for loop. So we're going to say while not correct, right? Because we want to keep guessing every time we're not correct. Believe me, there isn't that much more code to be made. It seems like a lot right now, I know. So boolean correct equals false. Okay. So now we need to check to see, did we guess right? So we get done with this right here, and we say the player has made a guess. So we'll say So we need three ifs, or an if, an if-else, and an else. Or if, else, if, and an else. And so what these are going to be is if player guess is greater than secret, we need to handle it. If player guess is less than secret, we need to handle it. And otherwise, correct, right? And so we know that correct, our value, will be true. And that still leaves us with these other things here. So we're going to need to say system.out.println, and we're going to then say your guess is too high. Oops. Try again. And we'll say correct equals false, just to be thorough. And we'll set that the same way. This one's going to say high or low as well. And so then, we'll say system.out.println, congratulations, you guessed the correct number. Alright, great. So we're going to run this as is. This currently is going to loop infinitely with no way of us exiting, but that's fine. So we'll guess 500. My guess is too high. I'll guess 250. I'll guess 125. I'll guess, I think it's like 62 or something. Just guess 80. Okay, so it's between 62 and 80. Let's say 75, 70, 65, 63, 64. Okay. Cool. So I guessed the right number. That's great. So for right now, when I guess the correct number, it's inside of this big inner loop, right? So while not correct, but now it is correct. So now we have to ask the player, do they want to play again, right? So that needs to be the first thing that we do. So they're going to come outside of this loop right here and say system.out. Or we should make this an if statement just to handle they guess too many times, right? So we'll say if correct, system.out.println, would you like to play again? Question mark. And then we'll do, what is it? Choice. So we need this to be something like y or n, right? So we'll do y/n. We'll say string play again equals, and we'll actually put that outside here, an empty string, and I'm not going to go through like crazy, make sure that the player isn't a jerk. We've already done that. If you want to do that down here, you can by using equals ignore case on strings. So you can do play again dot equals ignore case, and then if they don't do it, you can handle it in the same way by going through and checking that that's all that's in there. And using, a statement to force them to do it right. But we're going to say play again equals scan dot What did I call it? Oh, I declared scan in there, didn't I? Yeah, so that's gotta come out of there. We'll put that up with all of our other variables. So putting all your variables at the top like that, some people like that and some people don't. In this case, I just like having them all available while I'm teaching you guys, but there are probably better ways of doing it. Okay, so we're going to say if play again dot equals ignore case y, then correct equals true, and choice equals true. Else correct equals false, or no, correct equals true, because we need to, or wait, did we already exit? So we exited out of that loop already, so we only need to do choice equals false. And we'll throw in system.out.println. We're sorry to see you go. And then, so that's for if the player was correct, right? And so now we'll just do the else. If the player ran out of guesses, right? Because we do want to have a maximum number of guesses, which we'll implement in just a moment. So we'll kind of pull the same logic from right here, except we'll just change around the wording a little bit. That's just one line too many. And we'll say, would you like to play again? We're sorry to see you go, comma, loser. And we'll say something like, don't give up. Boom. And so we'll do that. Alright. So now the last thing that we want to do is we want to add in a number of maximum guesses, right? Do I use counter? Okay, so counter is being used. Is counter? Oh, okay. So counter is being used that way. So let's just do max guesses. And max guesses equals 0. And now we'll say, and max guesses is, or let's say guesses remaining. Is greater than 0. I'm just going to copy this and rename this, and I'll throw in, I'm going to throw in like 25 just to make it easy for myself because I'm not actually playing that much. But when we come down here, we need to do this. So we do guesses remaining minus equals 1. Okay, so great. So if we now run this, we can guess 500, we can guess 250, and on any of these we can guess wrong. Oh, and the reason why that doesn't work the way we expect it to is because we didn't reset our player guess. So the way to do that, so if you actually had a real jerk of a user, they could get around it. So let's actually solve for that. So we can get around that by doing, do we need player guess outside of there? I mean, I guess we can just put all this right in there. Sure. And then each time, yeah, alright. So if we just plop all this in there, and then we take player guess, and we declare it in here, rather than up there, that will solve our problem. Oh, it needs that to be in scope. That's gross. So it does need to be part of. Alright, fine. We'll do it a different way. So we'll put it up here where it was, and we'll just reset it to -1 every time. Equals -1. And I choose -1 because I know that that's not between 1 and 1,000. Alright, great. So once again, we give this a run. And this should hopefully be the last run, right? So we say 500, we throw in some crap, and it once again says that my guess is too low. Well, for now, just to get through to the end of the program, I'm going to leave it as it is. It works the first time through. There's something that needs to be solved there. So if I do like that, it's actually saying my guess is too low still. Oh, because I gave it a value. Ugh, gross. Can I actually just give it a value of, like, null? And wait. This shouldn't... I know what it is. This shouldn't be an or. This should be an and, right? Because... yeah. Or no. That should be an or. So this should keep going through, but these are printing out because they're in there. Right. Don't move around stuff while you're coding. It gets really confusing. So if we do like that, that should be... I hate when it tells me that something may not have been initialized when I know it was. Because there's no way to get through the program, like, to that point without it, but... Alright, so if we try this, great. And once again, we've somehow ended up with the same issue as we did before, which is a little ridiculous. Invalid guess, please enter the value between 1 and 1,000, which means that we should be going through here. All digits should be getting set to true, counters being incremented. And that while statement should be getting exited. And that should definitely be outside of there. Okay. Wow, this is turning into a ridiculously long video because I decided to do it this way. Alright. I'm going to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes. But first I need to debug this and figure out why it's doing what it's doing. So if not correct is always equal to true? I mean, not really. That falls inside of... oh, no it doesn't. Well, that'd do it. When your loop doesn't end where you think it does. Alright. God, what a mammoth of a program, huh? Okay, so we run this. Okay, so what happened here is I have somehow managed to make all of my guesses be run at the same time, so that's not good. So my guess is too low, try again, and then for some reason, so I need to set it so that this do while loop is hit again. So do blah 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 blah. So if I set player guess equals to -1, this should be run again. That's really strange that it's not. And I really should have broken this into parts. Okay, so else, if it's not our first time through, we should reset that counter variable. Okay, integer.parseInt, all digits equal true, counter plus plus. Alright, great. So now let's see what's happening by once again walking through this. By the way, doing this without a method is really hard. Okay, so we'll say, throw in just some junk there. And so that's false, it's false, counter equals that, player guess is -1, so it loops, great. So now it's asking us for more input. Oh, no, it isn't asking us for more input yet. So, invalid guess, please enter a value. All right. Say 500. So now it's going to loop through. 2, 3. All digits equals true, which is great. Great, great. And so now the player guesses 500, which works. Right. So your guess is too high. Correct is equal to false. Well, that's not what I was going for, is it? That's so. So while not correct. Ah, right. So we put the game over string inside of. We put the game over stuff in the game itself, which is why we're running into issues. So that needs to happen after the game ends, right? So we're going to come down here, and now we're going to use the most awesome feature in here, which is auto indent lines. So it'll fix our indenting so it's not all ridiculous. And now, hopefully, when we run this, we'll say 500, 250, 125, what was it, like 62, too low. Oh geez, I'm an idiot. 200, too high, 175, too low, 180, 185 is too high, 178, 179, okay. Alright, so my oh my god, I'm a moron right now. As you can see, when you do a lot of coding, it kind of fries your brain and you stop paying attention. Okay, so we'll say no. And cool. We're sorry to see you go. And then we'll run it one more time, and I'm just going to guess the same number, like 25 times. Okay, and for some reason, well, we know why. So if it's anything other than why, we're sorry to see you go, and since I lost, we're sorry to see you go, loser! And so next lesson, we're actually going to talk about methods. And methods are how we could have done this much, 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 much easier. So we're going to do this same thing, and it's going to take about 15 minutes. Alright, thanks for joining, guys. This is Damien. This has been Beginners Programming, and this has been like 50 minutes of your and my life. Take it easy.